just encourage y'all today with one of my life tips. And I've got Tasha Hart, which is the homie from another mother. She's all up in the house. And so, Tasha, introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and we'll get this conversation going.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach Paul, for having me. I am Tasha Hart, otherwise known as the Puzzle Lady on all social platforms. I'm the founder of Puzzle to Purpose, how to go from being puzzled to having intentional purpose in all areas of your life. That's what I do.
Awesome. 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 And so y'all know me, Coach Paul. If you don't know me, follow me. Check us out. You can go to my website, setfreelife.net. And, enough about me. We want to jump into this life tip. And it actually comes out of my book that just got published this last weekend. So the cool thing about it is, and you know how this feels. We reached over 100 sales, like 100 books. So I'm at 101 today.
Yes.
So praise God for that.
Yes.
So
Congratulations.
thank you so much, Tasha. And so today's life tip is life tip number 74, and you can find this in my book. It is the life tip 74 is, who is your go-to person in a crisis? So I'll share a little bit about what I've gone through and just different circumstances in my life and who my go-to person is. Because let's face it, we all say, well, I go to God and I go to Jesus, and that's number one.
Mhm.
However, I think we all have that one person that we go to that is like, dude, I need some help. Like, I'm in this situation, I'm in this circumstance. What should I do to get there? Whether it's a coach, a counselor, a pastor, a boss, a next door neighbor, somebody that you grew up with. There's always that person, I believe, that you go to in those crisis moments, right, Tasha?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think it also depends on the situation, who I'm going to. It's just like if you have a leak, you're calling the plumber. If you have issues with your power, you're calling the electrician. So it depends on the situation, who I go to. Of course, we're talking the next step down from God.
Right.
But I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Absolutely. And so my experiences are this, is that those go-to people that we choose, all right? There's a few points in my life that really truly helped me. And that's why we're here tonight, is to really pour into y'all, give you some nuggets to help you understand that, listen, just because somebody that is there in your life doesn't necessarily always mean that that person is going to give you the results that you need to go after, right? So I think you were doing this broadcast this morning about it just left my mind about collaborating and consent, right?
Yes.
That was
Yes.
powerful. Like, that was power. Like, go back and watch it, those who are watching. I was like, wow, that is so dope. Just because you collaborate with somebody doesn't mean you're giving them consent on everything in your life, right? And so
Absolutely.
I think
And
the
vice
same,
versa.
right? And I think the same applies to the go-to person. I believe for myself, and I would love to hear your input. Um, the go-to people that I go to, let's face it, there's been those times in my life where I go to certain people because I want to hear the answer that I know that they're going to give me, as far as making me feel good. Like,
Right.
hey, what do you think about this? And like, oh, dude, rock with it. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, you see? Yep, exactly. That's what I thought.
We're on the same page.
Right.
We're on the same page, you
and
know?
it and it's so funny because sometimes those people will always be on that same page just because they're your friends, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you regret it later when your emotions have come down a little bit and you're in your right mind again and you're like, oh, wow. Because you have power in your words. So even when you're choosing who you go to about certain situations, especially when it involves other people,
Mm,
it's hard to change their perspective of what you shared in the moment when you were emotional. So when you come back later and say, oh, no, no, forget everything I said about XYZ, they're the best, or they're this, they're thinking, Mm. What are you hiding? What are you not saying? Because you were all, I need some collaboration on how I'm feeling right now. So you have to be
Right.
careful of who you go to in the moment. And even if it is in an emotional moment, you need to know that you're going to the right person that understands you, that knows how you are, that will let you get that out without judging you or the situation or the person that you are needing to talk about or go to in crisis about. Because you don't want them to have a negative report on this person if it's just something temporary.
Absolutely. I love it. I love every bit of that. And it also ties into going to the people that are really going to give you the truth.
Absolutely.
And the
Whether
truth.
that's, yeah, no, what the truth in regards to yourself, maybe it's something tough that we need to hear for ourselves, and it could be something we're not expecting, or about the situation. Sometimes it could be something as simple as, I want to make this investment, and the person says, okay, but you have a light bill due.
Right.
What you We got to believe for some things, true, but we also got to be wise, and those things are tough to hear, and you got to be able to know who's going to tell you what's in your best interest and what's those safeguards. Think of guardrails. I've heard that preached on having guardrails in your life. So yeah.
Yeah. I love the whole concept of guardrails because I have my concept is that guardrails really truly bring you freedom.
Yes, we've talked about this before,
We
because
have.
your
Yeah.
guardrails are my framework, my
Yeah.
border pieces.
Yeah. I think we actually did that on one of the podcasts
Yeah.
on a Facebook. So let's just break that down really quick. Boundaries are the guardrails. God positioned and created and instituted boundaries in your life for freedom. So many people think that freedom is being able to do whatever they want to do, which in fact you can drive off of that cliff because there's no boundary. You
Yeah,
follow what I'm saying? And
absolutely.
so, this is where it's imperative that we as people do create boundaries in our life. We have to have boundaries from people coming in, from saying yes all the time, from saying no all the time, from being
Yeah.
wishy washy, from approval, from all of these things. There has to be those boundaries that we come to understand. Okay, you know what? This person's speaking truth. They're not mad at me. It's not that they don't love me, but it's that they love me because they're telling me the truth. And so I
Yes.
would love to hear your concept about the puzzle pieces for the boundaries.
Well, it's similar to what you just said. Sometimes those pieces or those guardrails, those boundaries are in place because somebody cares. If no one cared, they wouldn't be there. They'd let you go off the deep end, so to speak. But because somebody cares about your life and your contribution to this world, they put guardrails in place, they put framework in place, structure in place for our own good, for our own safety. And those pieces will look different depending on the situation. So, for
Mm.
example, in marriage, people don't think about it that way. We think about it for our businesses. We have insurance for our businesses. We have safeguards for buildings and cars. But what about relationships? Do you have guardrails? Do you have framework or borders in place for relationships that need to be protected?
Mm.
So, in a marriage relationship, I look at it as, me, my puzzle analogies, when you are putting a framework around something, those are those edge pieces. When they come out of the box, they're usually the first, or at least that's what I suggest. You pull those edge pieces out first because that's what builds the framework around the total vision. So, whatever the vision is you have for your marriage, for your
Wow.
business, there needs to be framework first, because like you said, that's the boundaries, that's what's going to protect us from what's on the outside. And what's even more amazing, when you were talking about this topic and the life tip number 74, where do you go in crisis? Well, if your framework is in place, that's easy because those pieces are there to protect you. So in crisis, you have your go to pieces, you have your framework. For a pastor, for example, a pastor will have other corner pieces that make up that framework that are there to hold them accountable.
Mm.
If you have a in a marriage, you should have some corner pieces. Grandma that's been married for umpteen years and grandpa, they should be corner pieces. It could be a close friend that's they've been married for some time. They could be a corner piece. When it's time to go to someone in crisis, you don't go to girlfriend. You don't go to girlfriend and complain about hubby or the other spouse, or you don't go to your boys and complain about her and man this. You go to those corner pieces because
Mm.
they're there to help you keep your framework in alignment for what you said you wanted for that relationship. You go to the
Wow.
wrong pieces and everything will get chaotic, it'll get out of order,
Right.
and we can go down that road.
You know, honestly, what dropped in my spirit is that, let's just be honest, right? Because we probably from the same era and we know the same music, but don't go to baby mama. All right. If you're married, don't be going to baby mama to try to talk about what's going on in the home, because that's where
Hmm.
things get disrupted. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
going to the wrong people, just like you said, don't be going to home girl, don't be going to homeboy, don't be going to your boo. All right.
Right,
You
right.
go straight to the source to say, listen, I need godly wisdom. I need somebody that is founded in the word. And if you're not a believer, somebody that is founded in positivity, right?
Yes.
Somebody that is that patriarch in your life that's already blazed that trail for you to say, that's the kind of marriage that I want. And so going to those people in crisis, it's very imperative that we understand which ones we go to and that are going to give us real sound advice.
And you brought up another important point. You said in crisis. And so I wanted to check something real quick.
Awesome.
Um, but crisis says a lot, just the very definition of it.
Mm,
And I wanted to share the definition. So, crisis, what it means is a time of intense difficulty and trouble or
wow.
danger. So think about that. When you're in crisis, I am so glad that you used that specific term. You didn't say who is your go-to person when you're in trouble. Trouble can look like a lot of things. Trouble can be a hangnail, but crisis is intense. It
Mm,
signifies danger. It signifies, okay, there's a fight or flight mode about to happen. And we
right.
know what the brain does when we're in that fight or flight mode. We aren't always thinking rationally. We're thinking about self preservation, even in just a conversation. And hello, I think it's Lisa
Yes.
from Dyersburg. Hey, so when you're talking about crisis and who do you go to in crisis, we have to keep in mind we're not always thinking rationally. We're thinking fight or flight,
Mm,
and we're looking for self preservation and who's going to help us in that self preservation. I'm right. Somebody agree with me, someone come alongside with me, someone come collaborate in this moment with me. And we
wow.
have to be careful with that because going to the wrong person in crisis can lead to a bigger crisis.
Man, you brought something up that is so powerful. Even the person that is coming to you in a crisis, take the responsibility to say, you know what? I don't know how to help you in this area,
That's
right?
good.
Who else can you go to? Or I may know somebody that can help you in this. Because man, I mean, this conversation can go in so many different streams, right? Because
Mhm.
when that person is that person that they come to, they also have to be, because they're responsible for everything that they're about to tell this person. Because like you said, man, you like opened up the whole conversation about crisis. It's not just trouble. It's like you're in a crisis, like in a financial crisis. You're in, somebody just got diagnosed with, God forbid, cancer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things, man, I was in this position in 2019. My best friend was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm.
He had it for 3 years and didn't tell nobody. And so I was the go-to person in his crisis. And in those moments, there was only a few people that I could reach out to, that I could literally say, I need your input, man. Like, this is what's going on. Like, what's going on? And one of
Mhm.
them was a pastor. And I said, why do I have to deal with this? He said, because you're the pastor of Set Free Life. This is your people. He said, but we're going to pray and we're going to take it to the Father. So for me, that was godly counsel. Then I also had those who were surrounded, that we were all boys, right, with
Mhm.
this same person, that were able to come and comfort not only me, but also comfort him. When you get a bunch of boys together, they're picking on each other's feet. They're looking at the gown. He's sitting in the hospital bed with his gown on. So we're picking on him and he's picking on us, because I understood,
Yeah.
I need those people around me right now that aren't going to be serious. I need those people around me and him right now that are going to lift his spirits. And so that's what I gathered, until it got to the point of, okay, now let me start letting the other layer of crisis barriers into this conversation, instead of, just bringing everybody in, because there's those levels of pain, those levels of emotion, those
Yeah.
levels of real talk that have to be, presented. Because when it came down to the real talk a week before he passed, I said, listen, you're listening to what all of us want for you. What do you want? And his response was, either God heal me or take me home. So that for me was him sharing with me in that crisis, saying,
Yeah.
I want to go home, man. I just want to be in peace. And so I said, okay, cool. And I literally prayed him out. And a week later, he was in heaven. And this is where it's imperative that we go to the right people, because he knew,
Yes.
like, he confided in me. He cried
Yeah.
with me. This guy was set free through some crazy bondages. And I always go back to that. And it's so crazy, Tasha, because there's text messages that I still have that are
Yeah.
of his, and we would just joke back and forth. And so every now and then I'll send that same text, that same number, a text, just so that I can save all the conversation. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if it's bad. But for me, when I'm in those moments of, I just need to laugh right now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I
Right?
can relate. I can relate to this in real time. I mean, I woke up with a crisis, and I've been dealing with this chronic swelling of my limbs and not having an answer and not knowing who it's safe to tell and go to, who's really going to pray with you and not just try to, because I'm like, we think the same, we think a little bit on the same. I don't want somebody permanently putting something on me. That's not why I'm calling. And
Right.
I don't want you to diagnose me forever with this XYZ. So I refuse to accept that, this is my swelling or my whatever this is, that it will be resolved. That's the
Right.
kind of person I need on my side. And I have certain people that encourage me through that, because it's hard. It messes with your self-esteem, it messes with your ability to communicate. It does a lot of things, but I think that crisis is where you decide in the moment who you're going to go to, who are you going to trust. And preparation helps in crisis. You're not going to make as many mistakes or as many wrong decisions if you prepare ahead of time. Don't wait for the crisis to happen.
Right.
I've had to deal with not knowing, at least until I see a specialist, I've had to deal with the thought that any given moment I can wake up and half my face looks like a watermelon. And I don't know, it interrupts your plans, it interrupts, but I have people in place on standby, ready to pray, ready to uplift, ready to encourage. I don't wait for the crisis before I already have a plan in place. And the same thing needs to happen for your life. You need to have those pieces already in place. You need to know who that person is that it's safe to call at 3 a.m. if that's what the situation requires. You need to know, no, that's not the person to call at 3 a.m. You
Right.
have to be prepared in and out of season. You don't wait for the crisis to come, because that's when you make mistakes. That's when you say things you don't mean. That's when you go to the wrong person. You go to the first person willing to agree with you or listen to you. And
Right.
it's not safe. It's not safe for that person, and it's not safe for you.
I love it. I love everything that you're saying because I can somewhat relate with what you're going through. Yours is, in your cheek, right? It's this allergic whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is the sciatic nerve
Yeah.
that I'm dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so right. I have to plan around the pain. Like I literally can't just be like, "Oh yeah, let's go for a hike," cuz it's like can't do it. Like it's like no matter what I do, no matter what I try, I can walk and I can go walk and there's times when I'll wake up. I mean, I've been dealing with this for now I think it's going on 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But
I know.
there's some times when I wake up and I'm like I don't know how I'm going to feel once I hit this floor.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's like, oh, that's not bad. Okay, and then it's like, oh, okay, there it is. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And then there's times when I'm hurting in my chair, but then I stand up to walk away, and I'm like, huh, there's no pain. So it's
Not knowing.
yeah, it's just so funny that you're saying that, not ha ha funny, but it's like I can relate because I never understood chronic pain. I never
Yeah.
understood it before. I'd hear people, man, I got fibromyalgia or this or that, and I'm just thinking, okay, well, I don't understand it. But when it's internal, when it's an internal pain,
Yeah.
God has shown me so much revelation how to have grace, how to really truly believe someone's story, right? Like
Ooh,
really
that's
believe
good.
it. And when somebody says that they're in pain, I can't compare my pain to your pain because pain is pain.
Mm-hmm.
A paper cut to you may be extraordinary. Paper cut to me may be like, suck it up. You know what I'm saying? But pain is pain. Everyone has their different pain points, their different pain levels, but it's who you go to in that crisis. And so for me right now, I'm looking at everything that's going on in my life and I'm like, who's my go to person in crisis? My wife.
Mm-hmm.
I go to my wife and it's humbling, Tasha, because when I say, baby, I need help putting my sock on.
Yeah.
That's like even something
Oh, yeah.
small like that. It's like I just need help putting my sock on. And in my mind, in everyone's mind, you're going, man, I remember when I used to be able to do backflips. I used to be able to walk on a fence with like just like a cat. I could do this and do that, but we sit outside now on the patio, and I just my wife the other day she was gardening, and she fell in this little crack
Oh
between
no.
the fence and
Yeah.
and like the little raised bed,
Oh
and
wow.
so she didn't fall or get hurt, but her leg fell in there, and she said that she literally like paused and was like, "Okay, I'm fine." When you're younger, you're like, you just pick your foot up and you just keep on rolling. And so what we've learned in this season, and it started with COVID, was at the end of the day, all we have is each other.
Yeah.
That's it. And so who do we go to? We go to one another. Do I have boys that I turn to and men? But this is um, there's a lot of bad that happened with COVID, but for me and my wife, it's been a huge, huge eye opener, a huge blessing because we've
Yeah.
gotten so much more close, and that's who I go to in my crisis.
If you said something, and it just brought this thought to mind, and when you were talking about your wife being your go-to, and just it being a humbling experience. And when you said the word humbling, it reminded me of, and it's funny because I got it, I think I have it right here. Yeah, John 10:10. The thief comes, he comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Well, in crisis, that's the perfect time. That's the perfect opportunity for the enemy to come in and try to kill, steal, and destroy. Because why? We're distracted. We're in that intense moment, remember, of feeling like we're in danger. We're not necessarily thinking on, 110%. We're reacting. And
Right.
that is where, because I think, especially for, and whether you're a Christian or not, but especially for people that I will say are operating with some pretty decent common sense, we think clearly, we make pretty good judgments just on a regular everyday level.
Right.
But even still, we get tempted, we get distracted. And in moments of crisis, if you're not, like we were saying a few minutes ago, if you're not prepared, if you're not willing to humble yourself, it's the perfect opportunity for the enemy to come in and actually tempt you to not be humble, to tempt you to do something that may seem subtle in the moment, like reaching out to the wrong person. And you don't realize that you're creating another crisis in that moment. You're not solving the problem. I know, I've seen it. I've seen it even in the church. I've seen it where God's even been used as an excuse. I'm going to God about this. I'm going to God about this crisis. Knowing good and well they're not going to God, they're going to sister so and so or brother whoever, because they know that that person's going to tell them what they want to hear. So you
Right.
can slap a Christian label on it or a phrase that makes us feel comfortable, but we know what we're doing in the moment.
Mm.
And I think this is a challenging tip. I think it challenges us to
Right.
go back and look at those things in our life that could potentially be a crisis later if we don't put those frameworks and those safety borders pieces in place now. Do it now before the crisis comes, because
Wow.
you don't want that to be your story. And I think sharing your story, I think letting people know that this is something we should be paying attention to. When you're getting ready to go camping, you prepare for the camping trip, you take the essentials,
Right.
or you have your emergency kit. Some of us, if you live, depending on where you live, you know what you have in the closet. You got that 5-gallon bucket of rice and some dry food and a generator because you don't know what's going to happen in a crisis and you want to be prepared.
Right.
We do these things for the maybes, but there's some things in life that we know are coming and we don't prepare. We don't prepare for them.
Wow. Wow. That's so good. That's so good, especially what you said about, basically using God's name in vain. And God showed me this a few, probably 2 years ago, that, people think it's, you know, saying damn, right? Listen, God showed me, he's like, that has nothing to do, that doesn't offend me, that doesn't hurt me. I'm still God. What offends me is that when you say, I'm waiting on God, or God told me to do this, because you're
Mm.
running from something, or I'm going to go to God, but I'm going to go here. That's what he means by don't use my name in vain. Don't just squander my name. Don't just put my
Mm-hmm.
name out there when you're really truly not
Yeah.
even coming after me. Obedience is better than sacrifice. And so in that, we have to understand that's where I've stopped probably the last 2 or 3 years. When I say God showed me this or God told me this, I'm very specific on who I'm telling
Mm-hmm.
and was it really God? Because we have to get to the place as a people of God to say, you know what, I made this decision and I'm praying that God is going to bless it. Versus, well, God told me to do that. That to me, in certain areas, not everyone, but that's hiding behind God's name, saying that
Yeah.
I'm waiting on God to do something when God is really waiting on us to do something. Amen.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even using God's name to hide from the crisis altogether. I've seen that. I've witnessed that, where someone will say, instead of, okay, dealing with that situation, your spouse wants to have the conversation, wants to deal with the crisis. This is what's going on. And you'll hear say something like, well, I've got a prayer meeting at church tonight. Ooh, that's the holy grail. I can't miss that prayer meeting. They need me.
Yeah.
And that somehow becomes the excuse to run away from what needs to be dealt with in the moment. So I think it can work both ways. I think you can run from it and use it to do that, and it's not the truth. You It's very dangerous. It's dangerous to play, like you said, play with the word of God and use that to hide from what may be your accountability coming. It could be your answer that's coming. Could be
Wow.
in that moment, if you just stay and face that thing and have that conversation and
Right.
stop running, that the crisis can actually be resolved pretty quickly.
Man, this is all so good. Like, this whole conversation was just awesome, and I'm so thankful that you were that you came on with me, because this is so true. I mean, the word crisis can take anyone down a path, and I love what you said, that this tip should challenge us,
Yeah.
because who do I really go to? Who am I trusting? Am I just trusting man's opinion, or am I really going to go to the Father first to say, show me who I go to in
Yes.
this situation?
Yes.
Open those doors for this thing to happen. You follow what I'm saying? Versus, I'm
Absolutely.
just going to go do this, and I'm preaching to myself right now, because I am a
Me too.
go getter. I'm all about go getter. But then at the end of the day, it's like, you know what? I'm tired of doing my will, because I just keep adding more problems to my life. And so, man, this has just been so awesome. So if you have any final thoughts, would love to hear them. But man, this could actually be a part two. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
we always say that.
Yeah,
Anytime you and I get together, there's always a part two. Like,
yeah,
there's always a part two. But I first, before we wrap it up, I do want to say thank you for your prayers, because I know just your prayers and prayers of some others today specifically, I wouldn't even be able to be on this broadcast right now.
wow,
I truly believe that without the prayers, because this was 10 times worse this morning. You saw it.
yeah,
And I could hardly talk. So the
yes,
fact that I'm able to be on here now and share and just hang out with you is a testament to knowing who to go to in crisis works. Because I knew who to go to. I knew who was going to pray. I knew who was going to not just pray one time. I've had people messaging me through the day, like, I'm still praying. And it's slowly gone down. It has been going down. And
wow,
I was looking at the clock and thinking, well, you know what I was thinking looking at the clock. But as I did get closer, I kept checking my face, because I was like, oh, I hope I can get on with Coach Paul. I hope I can talk. And look at God. I'm just so thankful. But to put that in perspective for everyone paying attention, if you don't wait for the crisis to come, get your go-to people in place for all areas of your life. For your finances, you should have a go-to person that you can talk to candidly, honestly. You can tell them about that extra 50 you hid, because you know that sale is coming at Bath and Body Works.
yeah,
I know. It's like, talk me off the cliff.
amen.
Talk me off the cliff. There's a sell at Hobby Lobby. That's my witness. Um, not like I don't have enough glue guns and markers. Anyway,
Well,
but yeah.
whenever you're in that position, the person that you don't want to call is Larissa, because she'd be like,
I
"Girl, you need
know.
to go."
Yes. Oh, and speaking of Louisa, we just want to bless her this evening. Just a quick mention. We normally are with the trio
Yes.
on Larissa's channel, but she is actually away and enjoying some time with friends. And we are hopping on together tonight, just kind of filling in that time. And then we'll be back with Larissa, the Grateful Chick, next week at
Yeah,
our regular time, 6:50. So I'm glad you brought her up. But
absolutely.
this has been so much fun. And it is making me think about this tip a little bit more, because although I
Mm,
have some pieces in place for certain areas, I'm
right.
challenging myself to go back and check those, because something that I learned just this week in my study time that God's been showing me is that we all have our safety zone, but the safety zone can change.
Mm,
We get comfortable. We know what this kind of crisis looks like. We got our pieces in place. We know who to call. But sometimes our comfort zone moves. It changes. It becomes something else. And when we think, oh, I got out of that comfort zone, no sooner than you got out of one, you're in another one. Now
mm,
you've gotten comfortable here when God's trying to move you to something else. So you got to be careful with these comfort zones and thinking, I'm out of it and I've got
wow.
this thing on lock and I'm okay, I'm good.
Wow.
Crisis avoided. Just double check, go back and see who are your go-to key people, your borders, your guardrails, if you will, your puzzle pieces.
Wow.
Yeah, puzzle pieces.
Wow. So good, Tasha. So good. I just want to highlight, and this just blesses me. Whoever Facebook user is that says I have the book and I'm making notes for myself. That's just awesome, and this is exactly what they
Yes.
needed, as if we were in their head. So they might be in one of the groups or something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so anyhow, we just want to thank you, Facebook user.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and somebody needs your T-shirt. Lisa Hatterley needs your T-shirt. So I'm
Lisa,
putting
you
that
need
on
my
the screen.
t-shirt. Yeah,
Yes,
I have to put it, you can website.
yeah,
My puzzle pieces. Yeah.
yes,
I forget that I had it on.
right. And so,
So go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I again, I'm just going back to what that person was saying. You never know, again, what somebody needs. So it's important to share these tips. It's important to, if you got something out of it, go share that,
Yeah,
because you could be helping somebody else that is thinking the same thing, possibly going through the same thing. Obviously, don't put yourself out there, and you don't have to tell your business and all that good stuff. Do it with wisdom. But I think this is the season that God is challenging us to not necessarily share more about ourselves, but share more about what he's doing in our lives. I am
mm,
thankful that I have people like Coach Paul to go to when I need prayer, and some really beautiful friends of mine that I won't start going down the list because we'll be here for another hour, but they've been praying the go-to pieces in my life. I'm grateful for that. Larissa will be happy that we plugged that in. Grateful. I'm
amen.
grateful for that. And the biggest thing is, even in crisis, we can have peace.
Mm, wow,
Preparation brings peace,
wow.
even in crisis. So if you just take a moment to get prepared, get Coach's book, go over some life tips, take some notes, start jotting down some names of pieces, if you will, that you can connect with and get supported around you and around the visions that God has for your life, and use that as a guide. Don't just read the tips and put it aside. Plug these things into your life,
Mm,
because preparation brings protection even in crisis, and you'll have peace.
man, that's so good. Preparation equals peace.
Yeah.
Preparation and all in between equals peace. That is so good. So thank you once again, Tasha. And that was Nancy Berg. Thank you, Nancy. I finally went I finally went onto my Facebook page and also saw it. And so just to let everyone know who is purchasing the book, that I know has purchased the book, I am inviting you, probably starting next week, to my private group called The Huddle. And so what we're going to be doing in that group is literally asking questions and saying, hey, what are you getting out of the book? Because I want this book to be interactive. And then through that, within that time, I'm also going to invite y'all, whoever wants to come, to an actual Zoom session and just really meet who's reading the book, what tips you're getting out of it, what you're getting out of it. I had
Same.
somebody tell me yesterday, they're like, "Hey, I am already using some of your stuff to put one of my programs together,"
Wow.
and they're like, "Is that okay?" And I'm like, "Sure, like use it because that's the
This
whole intent
works. Yeah.
of my book was listen, there's the game plan side. Make it your own because everything that I say may not resonate with you 100%, but there are some nuggets that you can take to say, you know what?
Mhm.
I'm going to write my plan on the right side of this page and I'm going to go by that plan. And so listen, I know y'all got busy evenings. I've got to jump off this call. This has been such a blessing. We thought we were going to go on for 30 minutes, but we've gone on for quite a while now, which is awesome. But we will be back next week with Larissa. She is the patriarch of live stream, and so we
Yes.
come in under her and we share our tips and our puzzle pieces and all those good things. And so join us next
Wednesday.
week. Yes, next Wednesday. Life tip number 3 is exactly what I have started to do. Let's see what life tip number
Oh
3 is.
yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah, let's just see
And
what that
just
is real quick.
while you're looking that up, Coach, I'll just remind everyone the Facebook users, we are going back and checking your comments. Sometimes it doesn't tell us who you are. So if we say that, it's not out of disrespect. Facebook doesn't show us your name. So unless you tell us in the comments who
Right,
you are, we see your comment, but we just don't know who's commenting.
right. Absolutely. Um, so yeah, that's about all I got. Would you like to pray us out, Tasha?
Absolutely. I will definitely do that. Gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for this time to just share some wisdom, another wonderful tip from Coach Paul. And we know that he was inspired by you to write these, and they are already impacting and changing lives. So we thank you for that. We thank you for the blessing that he doesn't even know is already having a ripple
Mm,
effect.
yes,
Generations of people that are going to live off of one life tip. That's just one, and you gave him 100, Father. So we thank you for that. And we know that he's humbled by it. We can see it in the way that people are responding. Lord, I thank you for the prayers that have gone up today on my behalf. I truly am grateful that I was able to
yes,
be on this broadcast with Coach. We know that this was a divine appointment because someone needed to know that today they can get prepared, and in preparation, they will find peace and avoid some crisis. And Lord, even if they're in the crisis, they can have peace because they have you. And so we thank you for everyone that's listening today, and we send blessings their way. Specifically, we send blessings of healing, we send blessings of wisdom, because I think in this time, it's wisdom, it's understanding, and being open to what you're doing that's going to help us through the rest of this year. So we thank you, we bless your name, and we just give you all the praise and glory. Amen.
amen and amen. Well, listen, guys, we will catch you next Wednesday, and you'll see us throughout Facebook and Haps throughout the week. But listen, come back Wednesday night, next Wednesday at I think it's 6:50 Central, right?
Yep.
Close to 7 o'clock.
6:50 Central.
Yes. And so we'll see you next week. And y'all have a blessed night. We love you.